It's good to see you in person. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Drew Cline is president of the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy and host of the WFEA Morning Update. I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. We've spoken on the radio over cell phone before, but this is better.
Yeah, this is good. So neutral arbiter here, neutral voice. So as a longtime journalist, I am here to ask questions and facilitate a conversation so you can learn from Vivek. So Vivek, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
To New Hampshire. Thanks for coming to Murphy's. I do this whenever I'm in an establishment that is letting us use their facilities, to patronize your host. There you go. So, Vivek Ramaswamy, you're here in New Hampshire, you've announced your campaign for president. So my question to you to start off the conversation is, you're from Ohio? There's a lot of good offices to run for in Ohio. Why are you running for president?
Yeah, so it's a question I actually thought about in 2022. I considered the Senate race in Ohio at that time. I actually don't fetishize holding public office at all. It's not a goal of mine in life, actually. I think there are a lot of ways.
So you're normal.
I don't know if I'm normal, but I'm not abnormal in that way. And so, I believe what Jeremy said, actually. I want to pick up where he left off. The threats to liberty today are not the threats we faced back in 1980. They show up in this new hybrid of government and business that actually is, and culture, by the way, that is far more powerful than either one of those things alone. And so I actually made a decision a couple of years ago to say that I was going to tackle this outside of government, okay? I wrote 3 books over the last 18 months. 2 of them are out. A 3rd one's coming out this year, specifically on the ESG issue later this year. I've traveled the country. I've been to a majority of states in this country trying to educate people about the threats posed to them through their financial system, speaking to state legislatures across the country and otherwise. And then I said, you know what? Rather than just highlighting the problem, I'm going to start a company. I started a company called Strive to compete with BlackRock, which actually pushes these values. Thank you. And it's been a success. I mean, we took over, in the first 3 months, we crossed over $500 million. So I believe I was having change through the market. That was my chosen path. And from a family perspective, it was perfect, okay? But I looked myself in the mirror, all right? And if I'm being honest with myself, as much as I was traveling the country and focusing on this top-down problem, this marriage of government and business, this top-down, often World Economic Forum-driven agenda here in America in the guise of stakeholder capitalism or whatever, it takes 2 to tango. Okay, what do I mean by that? There's a bottom-up piece to this too. Okay, there's a cultural problem in our country where that top-down piece wouldn't work if the people, us, we the people, didn't buy it up. Didn't buy up the victimhood narratives that they were selling. And so to me, I wanted to go to the root cause. And I think the root cause of this problem is that we're in the middle of a national identity crisis. Okay, the things that used to fill our void for purpose as Americans, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, whatever it might be, those things have disappeared. And that leaves a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when poison fills the void. And I think we have an opportunity to fill that void with a sense of purpose, American identity, that runs so deep that it dilutes these woke agendas to irrelevance. And I don't think market solutions alone can deliver that. I don't think a governor of an individual state can deliver that for an entire nation. I think there's no better way to deliver an American national identity in the year 2023 or 2024 than to successfully run for President of the United States and win and revive the actual ideals. Skip, I love the way you said it. The actual ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. Basic rules of the road and concepts, basic concepts of sovereignty. And I think the flip side of that comment about sovereignty is ask ourselves if we are sovereign. There he is, Skip. Ask ourselves if we are sovereign. But we have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what is it within each of us that makes us want to bend the knee to that authority? It's the same thing that made the Israelites want to go bow down to Pharaoh when they were lost in the desert. We're lost in the desert in America today. And I am running for president to revive the ideals that set this nation into motion, to revive the national identity that we miss. And if we can do that, and only if we can do that, can we then stand up to the actual external threats we face, communist China at the top of the list. And so could I do that as a congressman or a governor or as a market participant or a CEO? If the answer to that were yes, then I wouldn't be running for president. That is why I'm running.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're going to have some competition. You have some.
Yeah.
You're going to have more. So the question is, there are similar themes, not exactly the way you put it, and they're not exactly your ideas, but a little bit of similarity in some of the other people who are being thought of as running president. Why should a Republican primary voter in New Hampshire pick you over some of the other folks who might be running?
So look, I think that's going to be a 2024 question. One of my themes right now is that let's not obsess over the question of the who. Let that go for now. Kick that down the road to next year. 2023 should be the year of the what and the why. Okay, what do we stand for as a movement? What do we stand for as conservatives? What do we stand for as Americans? Let's define that. I don't think we have great answers to that question. I have a vision for the answer to that question. I'm going to offer mine. I hope every other candidate who enters this race brings their vision to the table too. Let's have at it. That's going to be good for the Republican Party. It's going to be good for the country. That's what this year needs to be about. By next year this time, you all will be deciding who is going to be the best standard bearer for that vision. So I always believe in answering a question, so I'm going to answer the question. But don't worry about the biographical details. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to come in here bragging about their accomplishments, throwing shade on the next guys. It doesn't matter if we don't actually stand for an affirmative agenda. Now, you ask me, I'll tell you a thing that's true about me, okay? It's not my skin color. It's not my age even. It is the fact that I'm not in politics. I am not a politician, okay? I was on Tucker Carlson. I got in trouble last night with my, where's Ben? Yo, he's in the back of him. He's I don't want to make him the bad guy, but I got in trouble with him. I went on Tucker Carlson's show last night. It gave me good time on air. We had a great conversation. I was like, oh, that went pretty well. He's like, come on, dude. You didn't mention Vivek2024.com one time on air. I'm a bad politician. But I'm not running as a politician, right? I am a person who builds things. I have built companies from scratch. I built a multi-billion-dollar biotech company that I led as CEO, got 5 drugs that I worked on that are approved. One of them is an approved drug for prostate cancer. Now I'm working on a different kind of cancer. Okay, and that cultural cure is going to come in the form of the policy agenda that we're taking all the way up to the White House. And I have a simple vision for running the federal government, okay? The people who we elect to run the government, I'm asking you to elect me as President of the United States. If you elect me as President of the United States, I will run the executive branch of the government. It's a simple proposition. Not the permanent state that actually runs the show today. So I have a lot of experience in the private sector, and I share this in common with Donald Trump, who I respect for what he did in 2015. I'll come back to him in a second. I respect what he did in 2015. If he hadn't done what he did in 2015, I probably wouldn't have even thought about doing this. Let's be really honest about that, because it would be a crazy idea. I give him the credit for being the OG version of the outside disruptor, okay? But now I have full credit for that. I find he's a friend. I actually find what he did in 2015 to be inspiring. I'm just going to be very frank about that. But you know what? He would know this as well as I do. If someone works for you and you can't fire them, that means that they don't actually work for you. It means you work for them. It means you are their slave. Yes, sir. Okay? And when I look at that relationship between Donald Trump and Anthony Fauci, or between Donald Trump and James Comey, that is not sovereignty. That is not self-governance. That is aristocracy in the guise of democracy. And so if there's one thing that I do more than any other, it is going to be to get into the federal government, to get rid of civil service protections, to say that if I'm President of the United States and you all are electing me to put me there, and I can't work for the federal government for more than 8 years, then by God, nobody who's working for me is going to work for the federal government for more than 8 years either, okay? We will take out half the federal government in size just by head count alone. I'd say the other way we do is we move them out of Washington, D.C., spread them across the country. Half of them won't even want to move. So we got to slash it down by 75% there. Take what's left, probably half the three-letter alphabet soup from FTC to SEC to God knows what alphabets, TSA. Shut it down. Okay, there's a lot of government agencies. Department of Education, why does that exist as a federal branch of government? This makes no sense to me. Now, it requires some technical solutions, okay? So this is where I'm going to bore you guys. But I'll tell you, the more boring it is, the more you got to pay attention, okay? So there's a 1974 act called the Impoundment Prevention Act that says that if Congress budgets funds for a specific agency, you as the president have to spend it. You know what my view is of Article 2 authority? I actually have read this thing called the Constitution. I'll say absolutely not. I do not have to spend it. In fact, if I'm running the show, I decide how to budget, where that money gets spent. We're going to shut those agencies down. I don't care if you have a civil service protection or not. Yes, I'm going to ask Congress to repeal those civil service protections and replace them with sunset clauses. But if they don't, I believe in Article 2 of the Constitution over an unconstitutional statute. I'm going to fire you anyway. We're going to send that to the Supreme Court, which today's Supreme Court is going to say that they're actually on my side of the table. So that's where I view this movement going, okay? Donald Trump got it started. Give the man credit. Love him. He's a friend. Give him the due credit that he deserves for that. But now it's America First 2.0. Okay, where we take this from here. And I think in order to put America first, we have to rediscover what America is. And I've said it a lot of different ways today, but I'm going to, for the purpose of tonight, use it the way Skip said it. It is about sovereignty. It is about the idea that we, the people, we as citizens, for better or worse, decide how we run this country. Not a permanent state, not an aristocracy, not a quasi-monarchical hybrid of corporate and state power that actually runs the show today. And I am running for president not just to articulate these ideas, but to deliver on them, not as a politician, but as somebody who will get in there, get it done, drop the mic, and hand it off to somebody else to take care of after 4 years.
All right. So just I just want to clarify, I'm going to get to audience questions here, but I just want to clarify something there. So in the Constitution, Congress comes first, and then the President. Congress still supreme under your view? President supreme? I'm just trying to get some.
No one is supreme. That is the whole point of the balance of power. The chief executive runs the executive branch of government.
After Congress tells them what to do, though.
Well, after Congress passes the laws that they enforce.
Right.
That is different from Congress actually delegating its own responsibilities to a lawmaking authority that actually was never enshrined in the Constitution. I love. This is why I like Drew. This is why I like Drew. No. This is good because this is good. I like Drew for this reason. I like New Hampshire for this reason. Thinking people. This is refreshing. I like this. Thank you. Jeremy is good for this reason. So this is good. So we got a waterfall of political accountability in this country. Okay. The Constitution says lawmaking authority sits in Congress. Well, what did they do? Over the course of the 70s, 60s, really started Johnson era stuff. I mean, we could maybe even FDR era stuff. Waterfall number one is to the alphabet soup of the federal government. Okay, that's the FTC, EPA, SEC, FDA stuff. Now there's the second step of the waterfall of political accountability to the new alphabet soup of AAPL, of FB, of GOOG, of AMZN. Now delegating even some of that authority to the private sector. And so what I say is we have a three-part system of government. We don't have a fourth state, an administrative state. We don't have a fifth branch of government that operates out of Silicon Valley at the government's pleasure. We have three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And I intend to keep it that way.
All right. Okay, so rather than have me ask all the questions that I want to ask, I have a radio show. I can do that, because I can call him and say, hey, come on my show.
Let's do it more. I like these, yeah.
But you can't do that. So I want to take some questions from the audience, but I want to take questions from the audience. Not preambles and preliminary statements about your beliefs from the audience. You get it? All right. Because there's a lot of people here, and Vivek has to hopefully get out of here before we got all stood in. So, anybody have a hand up? Gentleman back here in the scarf. You're going to have to speak up because we don't have a mic. So if you can boom your voice.
Vivek, I heard your position on CBDCs. I'd also like to
So I'll repeat the question. Thank you. What's your name?
John.
John asks a good question. So it's like an advanced question. So let me at least just break it down because there's a lot of alphabets there. So first question was about CBDCs, right? So that's central bank digital currencies. I'm an opponent to central bank digital currencies. This is table stakes. This is table stakes for any Republican candidate. You all have I'm going to pause to go on a small little soapbox here. You all have a sacred responsibility in the American electoral process, okay? You get to do, along with your friends in Iowa, something that the rest of the country doesn't get to do, which is this, actually. The rest of it's intermediated by a two-dimensional screen. This is where you actually get to press on who's real, who's not, who knows what they're doing, who doesn't. Whoever else comes through here, make sure you tie their hands to the same mast that I'm tying mine on central bank digital currencies, and I'll tell you why. Okay, this is the mechanism that the government uses or can use to effectuate its policy agenda that completely obviates the lawmaking process. So this means instead of the cash in your wallet or in your bank account, you have a digital ledger that the government manages instead. It's like you're playing in like a video game and you get certain points. If the government doesn't like what you're doing, it allows them to immediately deduct those points. Now, one of the most mysterious reasons for why you see proponents of CBDCs in the West, in places like the UK, where it's now become quite popular. You know, Rishi Sunak has actually spoken about this, so-called conservative in the UK. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Republicans in the United States following suit, is that China's doing it. So we have to do it to stay competitive. Think, people. Just think for a second. Think about this for a second. China is doing it for a reason. It's the very reason I told you. They believe in a social credit scoring system. They want to be able to do the thing that I told you to fear. That's why they're doing it. So why on earth would we want to imitate China? So they will say that, well, if we don't do it, then the dollar won't be strong anymore. Well, I got 2 points in response to that. The first most obvious point is that actually in a world in which the rest of the countries use these CBDCs, which are at risk of being used as punishment, I think the dollar might do just fine as a currency that people might want to hold in that world. And the second is it just presumes that the strong dollar should be some hands down policy goal anyway, which is this whole separate discussion for another day relating to imbalances of American manufacturing malcompetitiveness that's artificial at home. But that's a discussion for another day. Back to CBDCs, what you need to do is you need to ask every candidate, as a litmus test, do you commit to opposing the use of central bank digital currencies in the United States? Because that's a proxy for their view on sovereignty. It is a proxy for their view on whether or not they believe in the constitutional system of 3 branches of government rather than an extra constitutional vehicle of implementing their agendas. Now, when I actually was at Potter's Bakery down in Rochester this morning, and someone actually saw my tweet on this issue and said, hey, does it really matter what a president thinks? I might prefer, might it just be better if we'd have a president who doesn't even know what a CBDC is? and I thought that was a valid question for a second, but then I was like, nah, I don't think so. Because here's why. When people don't know the underlying actual issues for themselves, when they're just reading the binders that somebody else handed them and then spew those in the form of talking points that turn into policies, it means they're like flags. They look good, but they will wave in whatever direction the wind blows on a given day. That is not the kind of leader that we need in the United States today. And so my ask of you right now, I said 2023 isn't about the who. It's about the what and the why. But when you're thinking about the who in the back of your head, okay, make sure you're picking somebody who's speaking about what they're speaking about from their own knowledge base, from their own convictions. I think you all have, with a lot of New Hampshire practice over the years, probably a pretty good nose for somebody who's given you what someone told them to say versus somebody who's sharing with you their convictions. And I would rather take, I hope I speak for every one of you, somebody who agrees with 80% of what you say, but is saying it with the conviction that is their own, rather than 100% of what you say, of what you think, because it was poll tested for them to spew it back at you. That'd be my ask of you, and that's what the next year is going to be all about. And on the digital wallets and everything else, same answer, no, hard pass. Thank you very much. Next question. Oh, I like that a lot. So I love new ideas. I'm not officially making that part of my presidential policy statement yet just because I want to think about it and it's a serious proposal. But it sounds pretty good to me, actually. Especially, the only part that sort of threw me off initially is the use of the word Sarbanes-Oxley, which I have such an allergic reaction to in the first place. I'm like, where is he going with this? But actually, you're going in the right direction with this, which is reverse use that on the government itself, while we actually take off the government's shackles off the private sectors. And one of the things that I love and that I find hilarious about the federal government is that they will consistently apply the rules to the people who they regulate that are different from the rules they apply to themselves. Okay? All the regulated industries hate the existence of like apps like Signal or WhatsApp or whatever because they can't capture the actual data from it. Some of those same regulatory bodies, okay, including, FDA, SEC type of regulatory bodies, their own staff members are regularly using those same applications to communicate with one another because they want to evade FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, even as they're enforcing criminal or quasi-criminal penalties and civil fines on the industries they regulate. This is hypocrisy, so thank you for turning it on its head. I kind of like it. I'm going to think about it. Let's talk after, and maybe by the next time I come back to New Hampshire, we'll have item number 25 on the policy list. I like it. So thanks a lot, man. Lily.
So what is your opinion and view on United Nations Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum?
Yeah, so bad is the answer. The UN 2030 World Economic Forum, I think there has been, and I don't mean to boast about myself, I just say this today because it's actually really funny. I haven't had a chance to view social media or whatever in the last 24 hours, but I'm kind of honored. I didn't think I was going to get this kind of reception this early in the race, where a lot of people have been saying that, you know what, I've done business in China, and you know what, I've been invited to speak at the World Economic Forum, as President Trump has, most prominent people have, and that somehow that was going to be a problem for my candidacy in this. Look at what people actually have done. And there is not a person, this is the most boastful thing I say tonight, but I just want to be clear about it. There is not a person in America who has both pointed out and actually done something to take on the global hegemony of the World Economic Forum than I have over the last 3 years. And as US President, I do not intend to stop. Okay? Thank you. This is effectively a reversion to Old World Europe. Okay, Old World Europe was predicated on the model of a small group of leaders getting together in the back of palace walls to decide what was right for the rest of society at large. You know what? In fairness to them, that's how most political questions were settled for most of human history. So they got that going for them. We're the weirdos over here. But we weirdos decided that we want to do things differently. That we believe that for better or worse, the citizens of nations, this nation, decide for themselves how we govern and how we decide whether or how to tackle climate change, whether or how to tackle fill in the blank, systemic racism, misogyny, or whatever the cultural travail of the day may be. We the people decide that through the front door, not delegating that to some authority from the mountaintops of Davos. And what we see today is, I think, the defining political struggle of our time. It is not Democrats versus Republicans. It is not black versus white. It is not gay versus straight. It is the Great Reset versus the Great Uprising. Okay, the Great Reset has a worldview. The worldview is to dissolve boundaries. Dissolve boundaries between the public and private sector. Dissolve boundaries between nations so that leaders of these nations with centrally banked digital currencies can work together to dictate how we solve the common global good. In response to that vision, the Great Reset, we have what I call the Great Uprising, which says hell no to that vision. Okay? If I had to pick, I'm part of the Great Uprising and not the Great Reset. But I think that where this ends is that the Great Uprising tears it all down. We're done with the existing institutions, and we just build anew. And I want you to hear from me. If I had to pick, that's the side I'm on. But I think there's a better way still left. Okay, we can still sterilize the castle. Okay, we can still separate those boundaries between nations, between the public sector and the private sector, restore every institution and what it was supposed to stand for, be it a company, be it a university, be it the government. I still think we have a window to do that and to get it right. And so if we don't get it right, there's going to be a point in time where the whole thing is we just start with a blank slate and, you know, go for the Phoenix model, rising Phoenix out of the whole thing. But we're not there yet. And I think that my reason for running for president is that I believe I can be the person for you that actually restores those institutions back to what they were supposed to be, starting with the federal government and rejecting the demands of the three-letter acronymized global government from the WHO to the UN to the mountaintops of Davos or the WEF. I say absolutely not to that vision, and I will not be apologetic for it as President of the United States. Thank you.
I think you just inadvertently picked the campaign theme song there and all of that, mentioning the
What is it?
And Phoenix, and it's actually Muse, but anyway.
Oh, Muse. No, not bad. We'll play that at the next event.
I think a campaign theme song, that's not a bad one to go with. All right, next question. Right here in the front.
It's not the Chamber of Commerce question I asked 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
19 states have passed a resolution for an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments. Tomorrow is the big day up the road here in the full House to be the 20th House to do it, with the Senate still in question. How do you feel about the three topics, the limiting the size and scale of government, term limits, and the ability to propose amendments specifically to three topics in order to be able to take the power back to the states? And because they're never going to do that in Washington, they're never going to vote themselves to remove power from themselves.
So let me answer that question in two parts, okay? First is Article 5 convention. I'd say do it. It's going to be good for the country. I don't know that that's what's going to come out of it, but I think that that is a space that allows us to have the conversation that I care about. What does it mean to be American today? We live in a 1776 moment today. This is not about red versus blue in the year 2023. This is about the 1776 question that unleashed this nation at places not too far from where we're sitting today 250 years ago. We're overdue for that conversation, and you want to have an Article 5 version of it? Well, you know what? That's internal to the Constitution. That's within the system and how it's supposed to work. I'd say have it. I'd like to be there, and let's actually have that debate in the open. Now, on the specifics of the issues, I like them, but they're not thinking big enough, right? If we're going to take the trouble of getting that thing together, why do you want sunset clauses just for elected officials? I like that as much as the next guy. But for the administrative agencies, right? I think that the permanent state's the problem, because, I mean, states like this one, you got 400 representatives, great. In the assembly, awesome. They got to come back to you every 2 years. They get paid $125 or whatever. Sounds like self-government to me. It's a pretty good system. But we don't have that for the cancerous bureaucracy that actually runs the show. So I would just be a little bit more, if we're going through the trouble of convening it, let's be a little bit more ambitious about what we actually use it to achieve. But, you know, it has to go through the ratification process, et cetera, so the chances that something that comes out of that actually get passed is low. Which is almost another reason to just say, great, let's just go ahead and do it, because it sets the bar high for the conversation we have about rediscovering those American ideals. So that's a great question. I haven't been asked it again. Ask every other candidate the same thing. You have me on the record. I'd say yes, let's do it, for the reason I said. I wonder what, whoever hears next, tell me what they say, and we'll force that debate on the stage.
All right, so can I follow up on that? So
yeah.
If this is a 1776 moment, but you're running against woke culture. So
wrong, among other things.
Right,
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is there is a dominant woke culture, right?
There is, yeah.
So it's a 1776 moment in a 1619 project culture.
That's actually pretty well said. I like that.
So an Article 5 convention lets in everybody, people who want the 1776 revolution and people who think the 1619 project is peachy and want to impose that. So the original Constitution They were sent to amend the Articles of Confederation. That was their task. They were strictly bound to that, and they ignored it entirely and gave us a totally new document. So yes, they did. So, all right, fair enough. We agreed to disagree. Oh, okay. The point is, you read the papers at the time, a lot of people thought they got something that they weren't sent there to get. So how do you control this? Once you open the Article 5 Convention, right? It's out of control. It's the people, and whatever the people want, they're going to be able to do. Right?
Well, let me just take the last. I don't give a bad sound effect. The last part. I just want to repeat what you said. Whatever the people want, they get to do.
That's right.
That doesn't sound too bad to me.
Good or bad, right? So,
That doesn't sound too bad. But I think that here's the deeper point. Okay, I think there's a really important question embedded in there. I think there's some technicals on the history that I would also take issue with, because many people have sent people to Washington D.C. and every year and every month we get back things that we didn't think we sent them there to do. But this isn't the point. Here is not a constitutional history lesson.
yeah.
The point is the spirit of the question you asked, which I think is a good one, and one we ought to acknowledge in the conservative movement. You have to let everyone in, and all views get aired. So I'm in for that bargain.
All right.
I think that we have to live in a culture where you're free to speak your mind freely, as long as I get the same courtesy in return. But the problem today is that there's an asymmetry in how that standard is actually applied. I'll just give you one example, and corporate America is one of the spheres of American life that I know well. Okay, let's just take this censorship culture. This is a real debate on the right now. Okay, so let's have it. Let's air it. Let's get into the thick of it. Which is this debate about, you got the Sununu's of the world, your boy here, who says that we want free market principles, small government guy, government should stay out of these affairs. He's been critical of Ron DeSantis in Florida, who's using state power. I think that's too low resolution. Let's get into the details, okay? What I think we see in the actions of these private companies today is that it's actually not the invisible hand of the free market. It is just the invisible fist of government hiding behind the scene. I'll give you 2 examples of that. I'll give you 3 examples of that to make the point. One is tech censorship. Conservatives need to stop calling it big tech censorship, because that lends itself to this reductionist Sununu versus DeSantis debate. You want to see the solution? Let's call it what it actually is. It is government tech censorship, where government is using, thank you, they're using private companies to do through the back door what government could not get done through the front door under the Constitution. If it is state action in disguise, then the Constitution still applies. That's not the use of state power to coerce a private company. It is rolling back the federal government from actually coercing private companies as they are today. That's example 1. Example 2. Viewpoint discrimination even in the offline world. Okay, how many employees have been fired for wearing the hat of the wrong political candidate? Okay, for saying the wrong thing on social media, for attending the wrong political rally. Okay, countless numbers over the last several years. Now, I believe that political expression should be a civil right in this country if you're also going to protect race, sex, sexual orientation, religion, and national origin on the same footing. Now, they will say that that's state interference with private market decisions. Well, it turns out that's not true. First of all, you have to expand, you have to apply the standards even-handedly. If you love the free market, then by God, love the free market, but don't have these other constraints on the free market. Secondly, those constraints are what created viewpoint-based discrimination. I can prove that to you. Okay, the civil rights prohibitions on, say, race or gender have been construed so broadly to mean that you're committing a civil rights violation even if you share a view that is considered creating a hostile work environment for a member of the protected class. Well, how do you create a hostile work environment? Is by expressing a viewpoint. So what do we see there? The law has created the very conditions for the rampant viewpoint discrimination we see, while leaving political viewpoints unprotected. This makes no sense. This is senseless. The third example I'll give you is with the climate agenda. Okay, I'm friendly with the governor and others in Alaska. Okay, you know who loves the environment more than most Americans? Alaskans. You know who wants to drill for oil in Alaska more than most people is the Alaskans. You want to know why they can't? It's not because it's illegal. It's because no major bank is lending to drilling projects in Alaska. Why is that? Well, turns out there's this thing that John Kerry made every major bank CEO sign. It's like a climate pledge, a North America net zero alliance. I will remind you, banks are not charitable institutions. I want to know what they got in return. Okay, this is the same uniparty that served you the 2008 financial crisis and its aftermath. But if you just take a look at all of that, that then makes this other debate look childish by comparison between, oh, should we use more state power? It's the kind of thing that Chuck Todd would like for the Republican Party to be squabbling over. I heard his Meet the Press or whatever show he has on Sunday interview this last week, trying to reduce it to those two camps. And sometimes I think Republicans fall into that trap because they're just reciting whatever slogans they memorized or whatever talking points their binders gave them without actually getting into the essence of what's actually happening. And I think if we get to the essence of what's actually happening, we can channel the spirit of Reagan, not by imitating the words he uttered, but by channeling that spirit to address the unique challenges we face today. And for me, as US president, part of the pitch of my candidacy is that I will do that for you. I can do that for you. I am running for president to do that for this country. And I encourage you, right now, I'm only going to ask for your vote about 10 months from now. Right now, I'm just asking you to engage with this vision, with these ideas. Make sure you press every other candidate on these ideas too. And by this time next year, I predict you will know who actually understands what they're doing and who will actually get that job done. But for now, that's a humble ask I'll make in the meantime.
I'm going to get to the next question, but I just want to make a plug for the New Hampshire primary right now, because you said Chuck Todd or whatever, on Meet the Press or whatever show he has, you've been on Fox News a lot. You could do this campaigning, for the presidency on Chuck Todd's show and on national media, but you were here talking to voters one-on-one in New Hampshire, and that's pretty awesome. The center of gravity is in presidential politics, not in D.C., thanks to states like New Hampshire.
Amen.
So, and then I want to just say that the bartender is lonely, just so you know. Okay, next question.
What can you do as president with the woke agenda that goes on, the indoctrination of our children in public schools, in our universities? That's the reason why a lot of us are involved and engaged in here. It's the passionate heartbeat. You see so much fire from school boards, and this isn't a gotcha question.
No, it's a good question.
Because we're trying to figure it out too.
So I'll give you one. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot I'm going to do as president. I'll just give you two examples out of the gate. One is, and do me a favor. Just as I told you on CBDCs, make sure every Republican candidate lines up their act and is publicly on record saying the same thing I'm saying here. Okay? End affirmative action in every sphere of American life. We are done with it. We're done. That's actually a root cause for a lot of this woke ideology. It's upstream, but and you know what? Your question was precise. What can you do as U.S. president? I will tell you what I can do as U.S. president. I will tell you what I will do as U.S. president on day one. There is an executive order. You know it. 11246. Lyndon Johnson B. era. Lyndon B. Johnson era executive order that mandates the federal government, that by federal government mandates private companies that do business with the federal government to adopt race-based quotas in their hiring as a condition for doing business with the federal government. That encompasses 20% or more of the U.S. workforce. Every Republican president since then, with the stroke of a pen, could have crossed it out. I have had personal conversations with the policy folks on the Trump team, pressing them on why this did not, could not, or still cannot have happened. And the answer is fear of political backlash. That is not the political hill we want to die on. That's a direct quote, okay? I am willing to die on that political hill. That's the bottom line. And I think that the majority of this country is ready for restoring merit around it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is enforcing the and I see that, and I love that sign, gender ideology, and that is what I think that is the right way to say it, does not belong in schools. Thank you for being as crystal clear about that as you can be. I love that. This relates to my second point. Okay, it's a religion. It's a religion in a legal sense. So, a lot of people don't think about the existing civil rights laws. One of the features of my candidacy is that I'm bringing the spirit of the civil rights revolution, of Martin Luther King in the civil rights revolution, into the year 2023. We're going to apply those civil rights evenly across the board. What does that mean? Well, let's just take a look at this. I told you one thing I want to do. I want to make political expression of civil right. Well, let me just take the existing civil rights laws. There's a prohibition on discrimination on the basis of religion. That means two things. That means not only can you not discriminate against an employee for his religion, it means that you also cannot force, as a large employer or a school or anything else, an employee to bow down to your religion. They had in mind a cross. But it turns out, you read the Supreme Court's test for what counts as a religion, the modern woke ideology and gender ideology meet the Supreme Court's test to a T. That makes most of the existing DEI agendas a civil rights violation in America under existing laws. I will direct the Department of Justice to enforce those civil rights laws even-handedly. You cannot have it both ways. That is going to be the civil rights revolution of 2024.
Thank you.
I've been looking this way. We might have people on this side of the room. Anybody over here with questions?
I see one in the back.
Okay.
Upstairs.
Oh, you can. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right.
You mentioned earlier the concept that it might all burn down and we have rise like a phoenix. Some of us here, I left California 6 years ago because I saw a sinking ship, and some of us here in the room have moved to New Hampshire because we see opportunity in New Hampshire. What do you use your thoughts on independence movements and maybe you've heard of the Free State Project, but the idea of separation from D.C.?
So I am running for president to make sure we don't have to go there. I think that's where we're headed. Natural, that's where the velocity is going. I'm running for president to preserve this union, actually, because I believe that there is something greater that binds us together as Americans than the different shades of melanin in this room. Okay, we're more than a bunch of higher mammals with different skin color roaming a common geographic space, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. That's what America looks like to me today. But I think America is more than that. America is the set of ideas that bind us together across our diversity and our differences. And I believe deep in my bones that those ideals still exist. Okay, I'm running for president because I think most people in this country still believe those ideals to be true. I think most of you probably believe that most of your neighbors or your classmates or your colleagues believe these ideals to be true as well. I said that in my opening video for a reason. But you're not sure because you don't feel free to talk about it. So I think if we break down those conversational barriers, if we start talking openly again, we will discover that actually a majority of Americans, most Republicans and a good number of Democrats, 70% of this country in total or more, agree on those basic principles. We might disagree on corporate tax rates, okay? We might disagree on whether or not the federal government should be using, should be regulating signal on private market actors. Those are details.
Those are big things.
Those are big things.
Those are details.
But well, in the scheme of whether we have a nation left on it, I'm going to acknowledge room for big disagreement. We've had big disagreements for all 250 years of our national history. But do we still agree even on the basic rules of the road? And I think I'm saying something contrarian today when I tell you that I still think we do. That we believe in merit, that we believe in free speech and open debate as our mechanism of settling questions, that we believe that the people who we elect to run the government, whether or not we agree with them, ought to at least be the people who actually run the government. I think we agree on those basic rules of the road. Most of us do. The dividing line is not between Republicans and Democrats even anymore. It is between pro-American and anti-American. And when you draw it that way, it's at least 70-30, if not better, in our favor. And that is why I am running for president to revive those ideals so we have one nation left at the end of it rather than otherwise where this is going in the direction of a national divorce. That is the whole premise of my campaign. It is why I am personally doing it, because I told you I respected Donald Trump. I really do. I think that he's misunderstood, by the way. I know him. He cares about national unity. A lot of people think he doesn't. He cares about national unity. He just does. But he's not going to deliver it. And I am running for president to deliver unity to this country, not by showing up in the proverbial middle and saying, can't we all get along, guys, kumbaya, hold hands. That ain't going to work. Compromise. No. I'm delivering national unity by embracing the extremism, the radicalism of the ideas that define what it means to be American. And if we start at one end of the spectrum where we're starting in this room tonight, I think we go deep to the 30, 20-yard line on the other side. And the rest of them can be revealed to be the less than 20% of the country that they actually represent with that anti-American agenda. So that is why I think we're one nation left at the end of this. Thank you.
We have a gentleman over here who has a
Could you just please comment on China and the relationship to America?
I thought we'd never get there. Yeah, I was just thinking, right? So we don't have the luxury of time on our side. Everything we've talked about so far, this question was about China. We don't have the luxury of time on our side. China has forced the issue. We're working within a short window, and either we're going to get this right or we're not. Okay. Here's the difference between China in this century and the Soviet Union in the last one. We never relied on the Soviet Union to put the shoes on our feet or the phones in our pockets. We did not rely on our enemy to power our entire modern way of life. And I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if you disagree with me on this, okay? If that had been a Russian spy balloon, we would have shot it down and ratcheted up sanctions on Russia immediately. Raise your hand if you disagree with me on that. I don't see one hand out of a big number in this room, okay? I think we respectfully disagree. We'd have shot it down and ratcheted up those sanctions. And the reason we didn't do it vis-a-vis China is because we know their boot is on our neck when it comes to how we live our life, which is why the Declaration of Independence of 2023, or really it'll be 2025 when I'm hopefully elected, is the Declaration of Independence from China. Now, that won't be easy. I'm going to be really honest with you. I think it's really important that people not just give you applause lines without telling you what this involves. This will not be easy. It is going to involve some short-term inconvenience. I'm pretty hard line on this, okay? I think that, there's the easy stuff, abandon climate religion here altogether. A climate religion that does not shackle China at all. That's easy. TikTok under the age of 16, it's digital fentanyl. I have my whole views on how to deal with actual fentanyl coming through the southern border from raw ingredients imported from China. I think we need accountability for COVID-19, using every financial lever needed to do it, or else you're going to just expect worse in the future. But I'm a hard liner where I think that we need to go so far as to ban American companies from doing business in China until the CCP either falls or reforms its behaviors radically. That will not be easy, but we need to think on the timescales of history, not on the timescales of electoral cycles. We don't need Chamberlain right now, we need Churchill. And I think that we can muster that if we know what we're making the sacrifice for, which is why it comes down to, though actually China's front and center in my policy agenda and foreign policy agenda and my reason for running, because I actually think we have a short window to do this. Xi Jinping has shot China in the foot as part of his egomaniacal quest to keep a third term as leader of the CCP that he took over in October. That gives us a short window to pull the economic rug out from under them, to defeat them economically so that we will never have to militarily. That is actually optimistically, I mean this in a truthful, optimistic sense, it's a fertile window we have right now. I'm running for president to make sure somebody is in the Oval Office who actually takes advantage of it. I will be very honest with you, as the people who hopefully helped put me there, that there will be some inconvenience we're going to bear that because that is what's going to preserve the nation we have left on the other side of it, which will be not a bipolar leader of the world, but a single leader of the free world as we know it on the other side of that Declaration of Independence. Thank you.
All right, we have time for one more question, but I'm going to take the moderator's privilege of asking it because I think it's something that everybody in the room wants to know. And that is regarding you mentioned Russia, Ukraine war. How would you, I'm going to put it this way. What do you think President Biden and Congress have gotten right and gotten wrong in handling the Ukraine war?
So you're right, there is not enough time for this. So I'll give you something that you don't hear elsewhere, okay, then that also reflects my views, and then I'll give you my view on a forward-looking basis what I think we need to do. So here's the little mystery. Okay, wherever you are in the Ukraine, and basically I'll start with the end first. I do not think we should be spending any more money on Ukraine.
Right on.
This is where I land. It's just the right answer. So a prominent journalist texted me today. He's a big fan of mine. He says, you lost my vote today based on your commentary on Ukraine. I said, I'm really sorry about that, but you just have to prioritize when it comes to foreign policy. He didn't respond. But that is what it is. I can respect reasonable differences of opinion, but I can make it really easy on the easy part. President Biden, with one hand, is sending an aggregate of over $100 billion to Ukraine. Yet, with the other hand, here's the part a lot of people don't know, was lobbying the EU against its ban on Russian oil imports. Why? Because we have gone to the real war here at home against our own fossil fuel industry. So it is our own economic dependence, our own domestic war on our own industry here at home that created the very dependence on Russia that causes us to have to fight Russia using Ukraine when we could have just starved them had we been able to stand on our own 2 feet without it. So we don't have to disagree with each other on the Ukraine thing because the whole thing is fake. It is false. It is an artifact of our lack of economic self-sustenance. So that's where I land on it, is abandon this, and it comes back to this climate religion. And so abandon climate religion, embrace fossil fuels and nuclear energy too, unapologetically. Yeah. That is what it means to be American. And then China, Russia, the rest becomes a lot easier. And then to me, foreign policy is also about prioritization. Okay, declaring independence from China is number 1 on the list. Number 2 on the list is for a fraction. Oh, this makes a lot of people mad. I still don't get it. The defense establishment hates when I say this. For a fraction, and I'm talking like a big fraction, no, I'm talking a small fraction of the amount of money that we spend in Ukraine, we could literally in one fell swoop, a cycle of shock and awe, solve the cartel problem in the failed narco state known as drug cartel-infested Mexico today. Okay? So, as president, here's what I'm doing. Okay, first 3 months, get on the phone with President Obrador, tell him, all right, look, the drug cartels are your sugar daddy. There's a new daddy in town. We're going to help you. And you're going to do this for us. And if you don't do it, we're going to do it for you. Decimate the drug cartels. Go Soleimani, go Bin Laden on them, one cycle. And then we've actually done what the U.S. military is supposed to do, protect U.S. soil. If the U.S. military is supposed to do one thing, it is to protect this nation's borders. And we could have done that for a fraction of the cost that we spent in Ukraine. So for me, foreign policy is about prioritization. There you know my priorities number 1 and 2. And the whole undergirding of a foreign policy is based on being domestically strong at home. Abandoning climate religion and embracing energy is a good first step to get there.
All right. Listen, thank you so much. We're out of time, but I think you might have a few moments to meet some folks, maybe?
Yeah, we'll hang around for a few minutes before heading out. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Vivek2024.com. Now I'm a candidate.